Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Izuku had Regeneration quirk, and got Harem with Toga, Camie, Toru and Mina, part 2. So before we start, please go check out the author of this fanfic, alexluquir, link is in the description. Also subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's begin the video. The match had indeed already begun, and Ojiro along with Shoji had planned out their defense. They had set themselves up on the 3rd floor of the 6th-story building in a room near the corners, without any windows. Shoji and Ojiro used their combined strengths to move most of the boxes in the floor to the room they had chosen to set up in, filling it up to hide the bomb among the others. That was all the preparations they made, as they just assumed it would work well. It would just look like a room filled with boxes, so it didn't look like anything special. After they were done with that, Ojiro decided to scout through the building as soon as the match began, while Shoji kept himself in place, defending the room. On the other hand, Camie and Asri had a very decent plan which just so happened to counter their tactics. Okay, so I get that your quirk gives you the abilities of a frog, which is super adorable, by the way, and it means you can stick to walls, right? Camie happily asked Asri, who croaked softly and nodded, giving the blonde a small smile. Yes, Jiro. I'm guessing you want to climb up to the roof with me then, and sneak in, ribbit? Also, call me Tsu, the frog girl spoke. Okay, Tsu, and that was my plan. I'm glad we're, together in this. You're super smart, and totally cute too. We should be besties. The excitable blonde giggled, wrapping her arms around Tsu, who blushed slightly, and continued to croak happily. Thanks, you're cute too, Camie-chan, ribbit, and you're lucky to have Midoriya. He's something else, isn't he? The shorter of the two slowly pulled away from the hug, looking up at Camie with her two bigger black eyes. He's so hot, like OMG. But we're not dating yet. The blonde psycho wants him too, and I'm fine with sharing, but she's totally not lit about it, SMH. The gorgeous blonde lamented, shrugging her shoulders quickly afterwards. I can't even be with her, but I'll be sure about it soon. She'll be totally okay with it, lol. She smiled brightly, looking over at the building just as the time for preparation had finished up. Let's get going, Jiro. I want to hear more about your situation though. It's really fun. The green-haired girl nodded at her own words before leading the way to the building, letting Camie climb onto her back as she began to climb up the outside wall. In the monitoring room. I didn't think they'd take the roof to get in, but it's a smart move. They know about Asri's quirk, but not a lot about Camie's. The girls can use that to their advantage now. Plus, if Camie's illusions are widespread and last long, this match is already won for the two of them. Izuku started off muttering to himself lightly, with Toga still keeping herself glued onto her side, as Mina had retreated to hang back with Toru. Though Ochako had taken up Midoriya's other side, Tenya was also staying close just for conversation's sake. That is a good observation, Midoriya-san. Both Ojiro-san and Shoji-san are physical fighters, and if Utsushimi-san manages to keep them confused and at a distance, it will be an easy win. Ida agreed with a nod, crossing his arms in front of his chest as he watched the match. The bespectacled boy was already done with his match, as he and Koda had won. The other match that had played out had been won by Todoroki and Kyoka in a split second, as the whole building was frozen. It was probably Tsu's plan, but Utsushimi doesn't seem smart enough for it, Toga pointed out with a small scowl at all the praise Izuku had given the girl, squeezing his arm gently. Come on, Toga, I know you don't like her, but she's surprisingly smart. Even if she only talks in slang, she got 3rd in our class for the written exam. You really gotta work on dealing with jealousy. I'm pretty sure I'll be praising you during your match too, so don't worry. Midoriya quickly defused the situation, leaving Toga with a small pout and blush as she continued to watch the match. Ojiro, I hear some movement near the wall opposite of this room. They're coming in from the outside, probably the roof, Shoji spoke, as he turned one of his hands into an ear, calling out through his comms to the tail quirk user. I'm on the 1st floor right now. I'll head on up there now. You just keep listening in and telling me where the two are, Mashireo said quickly, immediately rushing back up the stairs, reaching the 4th floor in just a little less than a minute, only to find both Camie and Tsu standing there in front of him. The only problem was that there were multiple Camies and Tsu's endlessly duplicating and filling up the room. Of course, this was all just done by the use of Camie's illusions. It's Utsushimi's quirk, nothing else apparently. The floor is filled with illusions of both her and Tsu. There's sound and everything. I don't think I can find them like this. Just stay put, Shoji. Ojiro spoke out to his communications device, receiving a quick response from Shoji before beginning to walk through the now crowded hall, trying to find the actual two girls instead of the illusions. Sadly, that didn't work at all, as by the 5th step forward the tail quirk user took, he was promptly knocked out and captured by Camie, who simply chopped him on the back of the neck before completely wrapping him up in the capture tape. Masahiro Ojiro from the villains team has been captured, 6 minutes remain. And just as that announcement went off, the third floor was filled with Camie's illusions, as well, though they were weaker, and slightly less realistic than before. Both the blonde and frog quirk user quickly scoured the floor before finding Shoji in a room filled with boxes, deciding to plan out just a little bit more before heading in. Okay, so, literally what do we do? That big guy looks strong as hell. That's totally not cool. Camie started, a little breathless from overusing her quirk and keeping it going while speaking. You distract him, and I slip in, Jero? I'm faster, and I crawl on the roof, land on him, and wrap him in the capture tape. That'd work, Ribbit. Tsuyu quickly stated, the two girls agreeing on their plan before Tsu stuck herself onto the roof and crawled near the door, with Camie rushing in while pouring out even more illusions. Coming in through the front door? That's not very smart, Atsushimi-san. Shoji spoke, as soon as Camie had stepped into the room, swinging one of his arms at the blonde, which she quickly managed to dodge before falling on her butt, with the hulking six-armed man approaching her once again. He was a second away from swinging his arm before he managed to hear Tsuyu coming in to kick him. As he didn't manage to react fast enough, the frog quirk user delivered a strong drop kick to the taller teen's face, dropping him to the floor before Camie quickly wrapped both his hands up in the capture tape, smiling brightly as she did so. The hero team wins. Now come on back, you four, and someone get young Masahiro. I'm sorry about that kick, Shoji-san. I put a lot more power into it than I thought, Jero, Tsuyu quickly said, and helped the boy up along with Camie. It's alright, Aji-san. It was a good plan of action. Let's get going now, shall we? He spoke, and asked, to which both the girls responded with a nod and smile. Aiza baby, did you see how totes me and Tsu were? We literally kicked their asses, Camie excitedly yelled out, as soon as she and the rest of the participants for the training exercise entered the monitoring room, walking over to him with a bright smile. Oh yeah, Camie, nice job on that. You too, Izuku responded with a small smile, slowly standing up from his seat and stretching out slightly, still only wearing his torn-to-shreds suit. Thanks, Midoriya-san. Jero, call me Tsu by the way, Aju responded with a small smile and nodded. Oh, you guys were awesome. You were all like boom, blam, attack. That was so cool, Uraraka called out with a bright smile, throwing her fists in the air randomly. That was indeed an exemplary display of work, you two, Momo added on with a smile. They really caught us off guard. I guess Masahiro sighed softly. I wish I could have done more, Shoji-san, he lamented, shaking his head slightly. It's alright, Ojiro. They had a smarter plan, and more options. I'd say it was just a bad matchup. The six-armed teen spoke up, giving him 4 thumbs-ups, and 2 smiles on his hands. It was a strange, but heartwarming sight for some reason. You girls were so manly. That kick was cool as hell, Ajui, Kirishima yelled out with a toothy grin. It was a pretty good match, actually, heh. But you still managed to fall on your ass, Blondie. Toga giggled from Izuku's side, as he simply let out a sigh, and shook his head lightly. LOL, like why were you calling me Blondie if you're blonde too, shorty? That's literally the cringiest nickname I've heard yet, LMAO. I even liked it better when you called me Bigu Pie. Camie immediately retaliated, giving Himiko a small smile before turning to Izuku. But she's totes right. Aiza baby, I fell on my butt, mind rubbing the soreness out of it? The curvaceous girl spoke seductively, leaning in close to Midoriya. That actually somehow managed to get a very soft blush from the green-haired teen, which he quickly tried to cover up, but failed miserably, as Mina, Toru, Ochako, and surprisingly Tokoemi noticed it too. He was just caught off guard. Midori's blushing, Ashido squealed out, pointing over at him. That's so cute. Both Toru and Ochako spoke up. Midoriya has indeed succumbed to the darkness that's been chasing him. I wish you good luck on your travesties, my friend. The bird-headed boy nodded at Izuku. Why does he get all the chicks? How does he do it, man? Kaminari yelled out disappointedly, grabbing onto Sato's suit and shaking the bigger teen. It's not fair. He won't be getting anywhere near your fat ass, you bimbo. Stop trying to seduce him. Toga defended Izuku, putting herself right between him and Camie. It's okay, Toga. Thanks for defending me. Can we move on though? I'm sure this'll somehow advance the plot or whatever, but our sensei is kinda waiting. The green-haired boy pointed out, gently patting Toga's head, who slowly and happily leant into the contact. Yes, thank you, young Midoriya. I was just a little shocked by all your youthfulness, but make sure Midnight does not see it. That woman is something else. All Might laughed wholeheartedly, and gave a thumbs up. Okay, students, just, as always, who was the MVP for this match? Kirishima immediately raised his hand at this. It was definitely Ajui. She managed to make the plan work, and gave the two an entry point, and that kick she did was super manly. It was so cool, he excitedly spoke. Well, I would say that the MVP for this round should be Shoji. He stayed focused on the goal for this match, defending the bomb. He just managed to get caught off guard, and was overwhelmed, hence why the MVP should go to Utsushimi-san. Without her illusions, their plan might now have worked. Tenya chopped his hands in the air, nodding furiously at his own words. Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's Camie, plus, that plan was yours too, wasn't it? Izuku said, smiling at the blonde. I swear I'm not just saying this so she'll let me cop a feel or anything. I'm pretty sure she'd let me do so anyways. He joked quickly after, letting out a laugh, as Toga softly punched his chest. That's literally so true, lol. Camie agreed with a smile, giggling softly. Alright kids, enough about that. The MVP for this match is Camie Utsushimi. All Might quickly cut in before the situation got worse, as Toga once again looked like she was just a split second away from pouncing on Camie like she had done the day before. Oh, also, who were the MVPs from the last few matches? I was kinda rebuilding my mangled arm during that time in case you don't remember. The green-haired boy smiled. It was you, Kota, Todoroki, and now Utsushimi. The whole class voted for you actually. Kyoka looked over at Izuku, crossing her arms in front of her chest with a small smile, as well. It probably shouldn't have been me actually. I could have ended the fight a lot faster if I had just fought seriously from the start. I think it should be Uraraka or Yaoyorozu. They did their job, and stuck with it till the end. I ended up with my arm almost blown off for not fighting with all I had. He sighed out, and chuckled nervously, as All Might looked at him with what he imagined was a slightly disappointed smile. Well, it's good that you're reflecting on your past actions, young Midoriya. Next time do not go easy on your classmates, or we shall never know your true potential. As a hero, you will still be the MVP for your match though, as the plan devised was yours, and most of the takedowns, as well, not to mention you saved young Ishido. All Might gently reprimanded the team, giving him a thumbs up before deciding to move on to the final match. Now, the final match will be Team C, as heroes versus Team D, as villains. Get going students, the buffed up hero ordered, pointing towards the doorway so the students could leave, and get into positions, though was shortly interrupted by Bakugo, who stood there shell-shocked at what Midoriya had said earlier. The explosive quirk user had his hands crackling in anger, trying to hold back the bigger explosions out of pure rage. This was only for the sake of keeping his promise to the principal, which was that he wouldn't attack or act out on another student again. You went easy on me, you useless shit? Katsuki asked, rage evident in his eyes. God, the edgiest hero ever is back. Yeah, I went easy on you. I already got scolded for it, and everything won't happen again. I'll just kick your ass without you destroying my arm next time, boom bitch. Izuku waved his hand with a sigh, ignoring the louder explosions that came from Bakugo's palms, as he turned towards Toga, and patted her head softly again. Good luck. I'm hoping you'll get MVP. He smiled. I'll freaking kill you next time we fight, Deku. I'll kill you, and that blonde freak. The dirty ash blonde-haired teen snarled. Midoriya just sighed, and turned around to face the explosive teen, decking him in the face with a solid punch, as the class just exclaimed in surprise, with All Might included, who quickly put himself between the two former friends. Both of you, stop this at once or you will be sent to the principal's office again. You already got your warning, young Bakugo. Do not act out again, or you will be expelled, and control your emotions, young Midoriya. Fine. But I just want Boom Bitch to know one thing. He already destroyed my arm, baton, and guns. Hell, he wrecked my costume that was designed by my mom. That's already enough for me to want to beat the absolute shit out of him. But if he goes around insulting any of the people in the class, he's gonna come out worse than I did from that battle trial, so watch it, you edgy freak. Izuku spoke up in defense of himself, and the rest of the class just, as a warning, looked at Bakugo with an alarmingly serious expression, an attitude in comparison to the green-haired boy's usual nonchalance. Katsuki's eyes had only widened during that interaction, his hands still setting off small explosions, as he snarled, and turned away from Midoriya. Enough of that now, young Midoriya. I understand your feelings, but do not act out on them now or in the future. Now Team D and C, go prepare for your combat practice. All Might spoke, trying to get a hang on the situation once more. Why yeah, come on guys, we all want to watch the last match already, Kaminari said with a nervous chuckle, urging the teams to get going. Come on, Sato, let's go show off our manliness. As heroes, Kirishima gave him a grin, already just skipping over the tense atmosphere, and dragging the big-lipped teen out of the room. Toru quickly walked up to Toga, and poked her in the shoulder, the blonde girl jumping in surprise a little, as she turned to face the invisible girl, a bright blush evident on her cheeks at how Izuku had defended her fearlessly. Let's get going, Toga-chan, we've got some butt to kick. Hagakure threw her arms in the air, starting to lead the way out. I'll be right there, Toru-chan, I just need to get something really quick. Toga gave her partner a fanged smile, turning to face Izuku once more. Thank you for that. Izuku and I just have one small request before I go. The Yandere shuffled closer to her crush, whispering something into his ear to which he nodded at before quickly heading out of the room with her. Just about a minute passed before Izuku made his way back into the monitoring room, and Toga ran off with Toru to plan out their defense, simply walking back to the chair he was sitting in beforehand, completely ignoring the imprint of lips and small fangs on his neck. Also, the fact that his hero costume was missing, and that he only wore shorts now. The class noticed. They all did, and just decided to keep quiet about it even through their reactions. Ochako had immediately blushed along with Kyoka, while Camie and Mina had small pouts on their faces due to the very clear spot where they assumed Himiko had bitten into. Other than that, they were happily looking Izuku up and down, as he was only wearing shorts. Most of the girls in the class were, while the boys just decided to ignore the absolutely strange scene in front of them. Outside the designated building. Okay, man, I think we should just rush in there. With my hardening, and your power-up will probably be done quickly if we push through. Blondie's quirk doesn't work here, and Hagakure is only invisible. We got this, Kirishima spoke up with a toothy grin, which Sato responded to by nodding happily. Back in the monitoring room, they're freaked. That's all I gotta say. I mean, just look at the cameras where Toga and Hagakure are. They aren't even preparing, just standing near a window to rush out. Izuku leaned back in his seat, gently rubbing his hand over the small bite mark on his neck which had already disappeared. How can you be so sure, Deku-kun? Both Kirishima and Sato look really strong. Ochako threw her fist in the air, simulating some random series of punches. Also, why is your hero costume gone? Izuku smiled, and shrugged at that. Yeah, that's true, but I know those guys better than you two, and I agree with Midoriya. They aren't exactly the most clever. If the girls have one good trick up their sleeve, it's a done match. Kaminari agreed with Izuku, giving him a thumbs up. But seriously, man, why are your clothes gone? I guess we'll just have to wait and see why. I'm assuming he has a good reason for it. Shoji spoke, keeping his eyes glued onto the screen. I just gave it to Toga. She needed it apparently for whatever reason. Izuku shrugged again. The preparation time is up. The match has officially begun. All Might spoke up through the intercom. Kirishima and Sato took a few more seconds to plan out their tactic before walking into the building and slowly moving through the halls, having changed plans a tiny bit to find the bomb before going all out. Little did they know they were already screwed. The two girls had set up the bomb on the roof, as they knew that neither Kirishima or Sato would be able to get there quickly, and just exited the building as soon as the match started, entering through the front door and behind the heroes. Toru had gotten rid of her boots and gloves, and was just running around naked while Toga had transformed as soon as they were behind the other team. That was the one reason why Izuku's neck still had a small pair of lips noticeable on it. The blonde girl had transformed into him, and was wearing his costume. Hagakure was sneaking close to Sato while Himiko just decided to call them out, and distract them for a little bit. Hey guys, sorry, but All Might sent me in to check your comms. He said they were malfunctioning or something, so I brought you new ones. Toga, as Izuku spoke up, showed a small device on her hand, which was the one she supposedly had to use. Oh, thanks, man. We haven't really tried them out yet, so we didn't notice anything wrong with them. Kirishima chuckled, and walked closer to the disguised girl, with Sato following close behind him. Yeah, no worries here. You just give me yours, and I'll get out of your hair. Himiko smiled, as Kirishima removed the small device, and stretched his hand out towards her. Thanks for the easy win, guys. I thought you'd be more clever than this, actually. The yellow-eyed girl spoke up once more, as the two heroes looked on in confusion, just before Toga grabbed the capture tape from behind her, and swiftly wrapped it around Kirishima's arm and neck, basically anchoring his own arm around it. Eijiro Kirishima of the hero team has been captured. 9 minutes remain. Hey, what the hell? Sato spoke up, as Kirishima was muffled by his own arm sticking to his face firmly. How does that even work? The big-lipped boy called out, as Toga's disguise began to fade, leaving her just in her own hero costume. I think it's called being smart, buddy. You just lost. Toga smirked, as Toru swiftly wrapped her own capture tape around the hulking boy's ankles, finishing the match. It really was an easy win. Both heroes have been captured. The villain team wins, a booming voice called out. Yay, we won, Toga-chan. That was such a cool plan. Toru immediately threw herself at Himiko, hugging her tightly, as the two giggled and jumped in place a little. They finished the trial in record time. They could celebrate. Soon enough, the last team was back in the monitoring with the rest of the class. Kirishima and Sato were reasonably sad and disappointed at losing so quickly, without even giving a fight, while Toga and Toru were over the moon with the results. Hagakure was excitedly speaking with Mina and Tsuyu about the match, while Toga, being the yandere she is, immediately stuck herself with Izuku, constantly blushing, as she struggled to keep eye contact due to him being basically half naked. She had even been so excited about coming back to her friends and Izuku that she had left his destroyed hero suit in the building. He apparently didn't mind though, as he comfortably continued to stand beside the shorter blonde. Good job on that match, students. Now, who was the MVP for this match? Please, give an explanation instead of just pointing out who was cooler. It was clearly one of the two girls from the villain team. Both shitty hair and lips didn't do shit. They got freaked up. Bakugo snarled right off the bat, staying a little farther away from the rest of the class. Does he mean us by that? Sato quietly asked Kirishima, who furrowed his eyebrows and nodded. Well, I'd say it was Himiko-san. Their plan worked out solely because of her disguise and distraction, which worked on the hero team. She gave Hagakure-san enough time to sneak up on the other two before giving a swift, coordinated takedown. The plan was her idea as well, correct? Jairos asked, looking over to the two girls, who nodded. Yeah, plus, Toga-chan was smart enough to ask for Deku-kun's blood beforehand. That's why you came in with those marks on your neck, right? Ochako asked, giving both the blonde and green-haired boy a smile. Toga quickly nodded, and smiled, as well, blushing softly at all the praise she was getting. But may I ask why you took blood from his neck? I understand that it has great blood flow, but it would have been easier to take directly from the veins on the arms, correct? It seems a little impractical if I do say so myself, Tenya pointed out, as he raised his hand, looking over at his fellow students. Huh, he's actually right. Oh, I bet you just wanted to suck on his neck and give him a hickey, Toga-chan. Mina squealed out, pointing at the girl, and giggling loudly, as some of the others joined along. At that, Toga immediately began blushing even brighter, and attempted to hide behind Ochako, who somehow had an even bigger blush. Kaminari looked like he wanted to murder Midoriya, while the other boys in the class just chuckled and looked on in disbelief. Bakugo just kept quiet, letting out a soft growl in anger. How could a girl want Izuku instead of him? A useless meat shield? What a joke. Wow, I totally respect that girl. I would have done the same. That's lit. Fam. Camie smiled at the two. Seriously? Is no one going to point out how unfair this is? Midoriya has two of the hottest girls thirsting for him. What are we gonna be left with? Kaminari couldn't hold back anymore, simply shouting out before being interrupted by Kyoka stabbing an ear jack into him. Quiet, Sparkplug. All of you shut up too. All Might Sensei looks traumatized enough by you horny people, the purple-haired girl said with a small blush evident in her face, still struggling to keep her eyes off Izuku's body. Thank you, young Jiro. Yes, I must just say that you all did a splendid job today, and we will review your fights in class later on. For now, I must bid you adieu. All Might nervously laughed, as his body was lightly steaming, sprinting out of the room, and towards the teacher's lounge. My, I had no clue our professor knew French. Not only does he have an exquisite sense of style, but he knows the greatest language on earth. Aoyama sparkled from off to the side, laughing to himself. So does this mean we can leave already? Siro ignored his sparkling classmate, and asked, receiving a nod from Koda, simply shrugging, and starting to lead the class to the changing rooms once more. Meanwhile, Toga and Izuku stayed back a tiny bit at his request, watching the rest of the class get a lead on them before following behind. They weren't exactly sneaky though, as Camie, Ochako, and Jiro managed to notice them sticking back a bit. The blonde and brunette bubbling a little with jealousy, while Kyoka just blushed, as she could hear what they were saying. It wasn't anything too gossip-worthy, but it was still cute to hear. You did a great job, you know? You kinda surprised me at first with wanting to take my blood, but it's fine. I'm still a little curious as to why you bit and sucked at my neck a bit before taking the blood into the syringe. Midoriya asked with a small smile, looking down at Toga. Oh, I didn't want to hurt you. I bit into it and sucked first because my saliva has a numbing effect, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't want to get ahead of the other girls. I honestly don't understand how you don't notice them looking at you, Izuku-in. Those bimbos like you too, Himiko complained with a pout, as she stomped her foot on the ground lightly, looking right back up at the boy. I do notice. I kinda ignore them mostly. I mean, you probably noticed that you're exactly like a Yandere girlfriend. Even if we aren't dating yet, I just kinda think it's funny how defensive you get. It's cute. The taller of the two chuckled, shrugging his shoulders lightly. Also, would you mind moving our date for today? After school and all. I kinda wanted to visit my mom for the weekend, he chuckled, smiling at Toga. Himiko only blushed slightly, and nodded her head, giving Izuku a feigned smile before she quickly kissed his cheek. Yeah, that works perfectly. After class, right? Yeah, let's do that. She giggled softly, and began to run to the changing room, clearly extremely excited. I'm actually going on a date with a Yandere. I mean, I called her out for it even, and she didn't care, the green-haired boy thought with a smile, standing in place for a second before continuing on forwards to the changing rooms. It'll probably be fine. She might seem a little crazy, but that's fine, freak. I just hope she doesn't try to kidnap me or something. He sighed with a light shrug. As she's still cute. I'll take the risk. Izuku stepped forward, and into the changing rooms, actually feeling a tiny bit excited for the date. The day had just ended for the Hero Course students in U.A, meaning that Izuku and his classmates were just going back to the dorms after an admittedly tiring day. He had stayed back a little, as he was scolded by Aizawa for not pushing himself, threatening him with expulsion, as well before praising him for saving a classmate. It was nice of him to say so, and all, but because of the scruffy teacher, the green-haired boy was going to be late for his date. Well, not late just yet, but he wasn't going to have a lot of time to change into a different set of clothes if he didn't rush, and, as he honestly didn't want to disappoint Himiko in any way, he rushed to his room once he got to Class 1A's dorms. He had only about 5 minutes left to prepare, but thankfully, he had showered and cleaned himself thoroughly, so all he had to do was get dressed at least somewhat decently. He didn't even know what they were gonna do on their date anyways, so he had to find a more casual outfit. In those short 5 minutes Izuku had before meeting up with his girlfriend, he decided on wearing some jeans, a white t-shirt with a red and black squared flannel on top, as well as his signature red shoes. He didn't really even know how they were still in such a good state anyways. The shoes looked as good as new, and he just practically used them to do anything or go anywhere. Soon enough, he was downstairs in the building's lounge area waiting for Toga, simply sitting around with Kaminari, Kirishima, and Todoroki. The two more excitable boys were playing video games while Todoroki was simply reading a book while sitting on a nearby couch, as silent as ever. So, why are you all dressed up, Midoriya? I kinda was expecting you to pass out in your room after the day you had, getting your arm blown up, Kaminari said with a slightly nervous chuckle, keeping his eyes locked onto the TV screen in front of him. Even if Izuku did just pass the injury off like nothing, and reassured the class that he could take that, and probably more, it still made them all uneasy. Yeah, that's true. I mean, your quirk works like recovery girls, right? It's gotta drain your energy a ton to recover from something like that, Kirishima added on, absolutely demolishing the electric quirk user in the game the two played, and surprisingly, for once, Todoroki looked up from his book because of the question. It wasn't really that interesting per se, but it would give some insight into probably one of the most powerful quirks in their class, even if it wasn't specifically combat-oriented. It could regenerate a completely mangled arm in a few minutes. What else could it do exactly? Izuku snickered, and shook his head slightly, leaning back on the couch. I'm going out with Toga. She asked me out on a date yesterday, and I just said yeah. Also, nope. My quirk doesn't take my energy or anything. It's just regeneration without many drawbacks or any that I know of. It kinda makes sense though, It isn't combat-oriented while you all have extremely powerful quirks. I gotta at least be able to rank your attacks, and still, it boosts me up a little bit. Like strength-wise, speed-wise, and durability-wise. I think the most I've lifted has been something like 800 pounds, but that's not a lot considering some of the strength-enhancing quirks that exist. He chuckled and leant back into the couch a little more, his amusement growing, as both Kaminari and Kirishima turned towards him with different looks, dropping their controllers. What? You already got a date? It's the second day of class. Help me get a date too, with anyone, I don't care. Kaminari immediately shouted out, getting on his knees and begging Midoriya for help. Kirishima on the other hand stood up, and threw his fist in the air, looking at Izuku with competitive eyes. Hell yeah, that's incredible. Even if you don't have a quirk to fight, you're strong as shit. That's so manly. We should totally train together. The redhead nodded his head excitedly. Sure, I don't mind training at all though. Kaminari, I'm not sure how to help you. I guess all the girls are just incredibly attracted to my roguish good looks. Izuku playfully responded back, and smiled, glancing over at Todoroki who was still just staring at him. What's up with the stars, man? Got a crush on me or something? He asked with a grin. Todoroki shook his head, and shut his book before standing up, starting to walk out of the room. You're just weaker than I expected is all. None of you pose a real threat so far, which is disappointing. He spoke in a monotone voice, disappearing into the elevator. Kaminari and Kirishima just looked on in shock at the bold declaration, while Izuku laughed and shrugged his shoulders. Wow. Another cocky asshole in the class along with Boom Bitch. I guess we'll just have to beat it into his head that we're better or equal to him, huh? Yeah, we'll show them, man. Kirishima gave the green-haired boy a toothy grin, and clapped Kaminari on the back, urging him to follow along, and get changed to train even more for the day. I'm pumped up now. We're gonna train. Good luck on your date, Midoriya. The two strangely friendly guys disappeared up the stairs, as well, leaving Izuku alone for a few moments before he heard the elevator ring. Quickly looking over at it, and smiling, as he saw Himiko basically run out with a feigned smile, and small blush. Izuku-kun, you look so good in that, and I even thought you looked great in the university's uniform. Toga stopped once she was just a few inches away from Izuku, looking up at him with content and curious eyes. Thanks, Toga. You look really good too. Cute and hot, actually. He smiled and complimented her, looking down and over her outfit, which was just a simple pair of white sneakers, a white skirt, and a light blue sweatshirt. She also wore her hair in her signature buns. At his compliments, Himiko's cheeks just blushed even brighter than before, and she gently punched his chest in slight embarrassment before leaning back into him and grabbing a hold of his hand, immediately starting to lead him out of the building. Come on, let's go so we can make out later and do boyfriend-girlfriend things. She giggled softly, still dragging the boy out. We're not dating yet, why not? But why the rush? We've got plenty of time. And I kinda just planned out 2 places where we can go anyways, Midoriya asked with a small tilt of his head, looking down at the still blushing blonde. It's because those other bimbos wanted to see you before our date. I don't even know how they found out about it, but that pink girl and Uraraka-chan wanted to talk to you for some reason. I don't want them to interrupt us. Now let's go. What's the plan for today? Himiko nodded her head and latched onto Izuku's arm, holding onto it firmly, as the two walked side by side and out of campus. The boy knew they probably had to get permission or a pass, but they were only going out for a few hours. It'd be fine anyways. Izuku also decided to just pay no mind to her explanation, as it didn't really matter since Himiko had already dragged him away. Oh, I was thinking we could go out to a cafe and eat something. I'll pay, and everything, then probably bowling or an arcade? That could be fun, right? He suggested, following Toga's lead towards the bus station which would take them more into the city. Toga happily nodded and grinned, taking a seat at the bus stop along with Izuku as they waited for the vehicle to come. For some reason, Izuku had a weird feeling about the date. He was thinking that it would be a good date either way, but he couldn't shake the bad feeling he had. After most of the afternoon passed, the two were already done with the arcade, and had arrived at the coffee shop, ordering their desired drinks before sitting down on a bench outside of the store, just looking out at the surprisingly busy street. It was a weekday, and the city was flooding with people for some reason. Even the arcade was filled. You know, I was actually kind of surprised when you kinda glued yourself onto me the first day of class. Izuku smiled, taking a short sip of his iced tea. Not that I'm complaining though. Himiko immediately perked up. Really? I mean, I've already said I think you're really hot, so that's surprising. I was thinking that you probably already had a girlfriend back then. You have kinda like a popular guy vibe, you know? Being funny, hot and all. She giggled. Not at all actually. School before you and now was pretty much like a smelly sock doused in dog shit which was then swallowed and vomited out by a horse. It was terrible. He chuckled, scratching over the back of his head. Childhood in general wasn't great. Shit was pretty much decided by who had incredible quirks and all, or who had strong and normal ones, really. I have a pretty much invisible quirk, so I was kind of isolated, considered quirkless, and bullied. I mean, haven't you ever wondered why Bakugo hates me so much? And why do I hate him back? He made life hell back then. Well, he and his troop of goons, Izuku explained, sighing softly. I guess that you two had some bad blood, but I didn't think it was bullying. I went through a similar thing when I was little anyways. Having a blood quirk immediately makes you look like a freak, and with my yellow eyes and fang teeth, that was just amplified. I was the token weirdo. It sucked too. And those things are from my dad's side since my grandma had a cat quirk. My parents thought I looked cute at least. She shook her head sadly, placing her drink down on the floor right next to her legs. Izuku gave Toga a small smile, and gently wrapped his arm around her shoulder, pulling her closer to him as he suddenly chuckled. I guess it makes sense that we like each other, huh? Two bullied kids, two kids who are now extremely hot and amazing. It's like something out of a movie. He playfully spoke, looking down at the blonde who was gazing right back up into his eyes, her cheeks flushed red. Do you like me too? Really? She quietly asked, fiddling with the edge of her skirt, still looking up at Izuku. Well, yeah, I thought it was pretty obvious when I immediately agreed to go on a date. I found you cute then, and now I find you even cuter. I also want to know more about you too, and I have always wanted a kind of a Yandere overprotective girlfriend, kind of a dream of mine. He smiled a little wider, slowly sliding his arm to be around Himiko's waist, as she became even shyer, hiding her face against his shoulder. A shy Yandere too. I hit the jackpot here, the green-haired boy playfully spoke, getting a light giggle from the girl. I'm not a Yandere, I just get jealous easily, really easily, even with guys I'm not dating yet. That sounds like a Yandere to me, Toga, though I don't really give a shit. We haven't even talked much or known each other for long, but I'd say we'd make a good couple, or at least I'd like to get to know you better that way, you know? Izuku said, once again smiling down at Himiko, as she pulled her head back from its hiding spot. And that way you probably won't have to be nervous or scared of other people flirting with me, right? An official couple should be untouchable. Probably it's also been a pretty good date so far. At least I think so. He snickered lightly. Toga immediately sat up at those words, and furiously nodded her head, wearing an excited smile instead of the shyer one from earlier. It's been a great date. I've had a ton of fun. And we beat those little kids at the arcade. That was even better. She laughed almost manically at the events that transpired just a bit ago. Anne, I would definitely like us to be a couple even if we don't know each other that well. We'll be learning more constantly then. And those other bimbos will back off. Toga giggled softly, slightly leaning over to pick her drink back up off the ground, and taking a quick sip, as she looked right back towards Izuku. So does this make us a couple, right? Boyfriend and girlfriend? I'd still kinda like it if you would ask me directly. I think it'd be pretty cute. She blushed once more. Wow, really? It's not enough for me to say I want us to date? Izuku couldn't help but laugh, playfully shaking his head at Toga. Sure God, I feel like I'm proposing or something. He smiled, turning a little more to face the blonde girl directly, gently taking one of her hands in his own. Toga Himiko, would you do me the honor of being my girlfriend? At that, Himiko simply squealed out loud, and giggled while turning, as red as a tomato, nodding her head at a speed that would even rival Ida's. I would the excitable blonde started before getting interrupted by loud screams coming from the far side of the street, just when they were gonna officially start dating. What a freaking mess. For freak Sake, the blood quirk user instantly yelled out in anger because of the interruption, standing up, and looking towards the origin of the sound, with Izuku doing the same. A massive crowd of people was running towards the two before passing them, still rushing away from something, screaming, and yelling in panic. Run! Those are villains! Run away! Where are the heroes? Hide quickly! The callouts could be heard coming from the panicked crowd, who kept running, as Izuku and Toga stood there. The green-haired boy quickly searched for the supposed villains, and found one of them, ripping an ATM from off the ground before smashing it, and taking the cash. That only indicated super strength, along with the hulking physique. He did have a shitty outfit though. The second villain was noticed by Himiko, being a young woman who was somehow pulling chunks of concrete and dirt off the ground, using smaller pieces to scare and hurt the escaping crowd. Once the threat had been identified, Izuku grabbed a hold of Toga's hand and ran back into the coffee shop along with her, ducking inside and hiding from sight. There was a big problem though, as the store was still filled by people hiding away. If one of the stores was filled, then the two heroes in training could only assume all the nearby ones were too. The panic from the escaping wave of people was very easy to notice. Okay, shit, you saw the two, right? One with what I can only assume is a strength quirk, and the other with some type of earth manipulation. Concrete maybe? I've got no clear idea of the second one, really. Izuku started, as he spoke to Toga. Both clearly dangerous, and with strong quirks, and if this store has people in it, the boy pointed over to the people hiding with, and around them. Then all the others do too, freak. The possibility of civilian casualties is way too high if they keep just taking money from every ATM or store they see, not to mention that they clearly don't care about hurting people, he said, letting out a sigh. I think I have a plan. Himiko nodded at his words, her eyes filled with worry, as she looked at the crowd gathered at the store with them before turning back to face Izuku. Wait, I get you want to help these people, but we're not even trained yet. It's the second day we've even been in the heroics course, Izuku. The blonde panicked slightly at him, simply saying he had a plan, hoping to stop him while still somehow knowing that nothing was stopping the boy from wanting to help. I know, I really do, Toga, but someone will get hurt if we don't try and help. Just hear me out. You're really freaking quick and silent, so I'm sure you can get people out of the stores and to safety, and I'm a loud, obnoxious asshole. I can get their attention, and once I do, I'll stall. You get people away, and I buy time until real heroes arrive. Midoriya said, carefully grabbing onto one of Toga's hands and squeezing reassuringly. Please just trust me on this. I mean, freak, trust is an important part of a relationship, right? He chuckled sheepishly, eyes filled with hope and determination. Still though, even after he told Toga his plan, she didn't seem fully convinced at all. She was clearly hesitant and nervous, but after a few moments of thought, she gave Izuku a very slight nod. Fine, we're doing this, but stay safe. Don't risk getting hurt either. I freaking know you have a regeneration quirk, but I'm sure you can still feel pain. Don't do anything unnecessary. Himiko sighed out in slight annoyance, slipping her hand away from Midoriya's and grabbing onto his shirt, pulling him closer. Quickly kiss before pulling back, pointing at him menacingly. We're freaking dating now too, okay? Don't be a dumbass. Don't risk shit, she repeated, pushing him gently and urging him to go. She looked incredibly determined and stern, though still had a bright blush on her face, as she moved to get the other people out. Freaking shit. I have a hot girlfriend now. I do this, then I'm making out with her at the dorms. Yup. Izuku sighed constantly, and stood up, casually walking out of the store, and looking over at the two villains who were still just storing away the money from the first couple of ATMs they broke. Hey assholes, the freak are you trying to do, huh? I mean, clearly you're robbing and all, but why would you do it today? I was just on a freaking date, he called out, aiming to just annoy the villains. What is this? A freaking teenager trying to play hero? The man laughed out, pulling a large chunk of metal out of the broken down ATM on the street. You don't even look like much. Ha, what a joke, and he was on a date too. Maybe he's just acting cool for his girlfriend. The villainess laughed, as well, pulling out a chunk of concrete off the sidewalk. Should we teach him a lesson? She smiled, all of a sudden flinging the massive piece of ground towards Izuku. The green-haired boy immediately rolled out of the way, and stood back up, looking over at the villains with a smug smile. Really? That's it? God, I mean, no wonder I don't recognize you. You're probably just some shitty, grade F villains. What are your names even? Barbie and Ken? He laughed softly. Freak, that's a good joke. I should write that down later. Izuku spoke once more, only agitating the villains further, as the woman began to levitate more pieces of concrete off the ground, while the massive man tossed the metal he had ripped out again, and began rushing at the boy. They weren't really the smartest duo of bad guys. That was pretty clear to Izuku. Meanwhile, Toga had just managed to get everyone who was hiding in the coffee shop away through the back entrance, following behind them, and to safety before she returned to where Izuku was, hiding in the alley between two nearby buildings. She knew that her now boyfriend was probably one of the strongest in her class, or at least she thought so, and she was sure he could handle himself in most situations. But that still didn't reassure her completely about their situation. Izuku had an invisible quirk, was skilled, and was extremely strong, and quick anyways, but the villains seemed too strong for him either way. It was two fully grown adults against a boy who had just started the hero course at Udata University. Not to mention those villains had clearly more combat-oriented quirks. She couldn't help but worry about him, but from what she could see, he was faster, and doing better than the other two. He was easily dodging the bigger man's punches while also evading the massive chunks of concrete the female villain was throwing his way. Still, she wanted to help the green-haired boy, so she immediately began looking for things or anything that might help him, as she knew that just jumping into the fight would only add more risk. She didn't have a combat-oriented quirk either. It would have just made Izuku worry more, as well, so she did the best next thing, and found a weapon he could use. Well, not exactly found. Toga simply managed to rip apart a pipe that ran up the side of the building, and broke off a smaller piece, basically making a galvanized steel pipe that she hoped would help her boyfriend out. Izuku, catch! Himiko yelled out, throwing the long piece of steel just as she caught Midoriya's attention, allowing him to catch the pipe, and immediately swing it at the villain's face, knocking him back momentarily. Though, just as he did so, the cement manipulation quirk user rose another smaller chunk out of the ground, and threw it at Izuku, throwing him back several feet, and onto a bench, which broke under the strength of the landing. Shit didn't hurt much, but freak, that caught me off guard. The green-haired boy winced slightly, and picked himself up off the broken-down bench, just as the hulking villain came in for another attack, which was surprisingly stopped by two bright yellow spiral shockwaves. That simple attack managed to throw the villain off balance, and knock him to the ground next to Izuku, who proceeded to slam the metal pipe to the strength-enhanced villain's head, knocking him out completely. Heroes are here then? He wondered out loud, looking back only to find no one at all, before looking up at the sky, finding a blue-haired girl wearing a Udata uniform giving him a small wave. Izuku, are you okay? Toga interrupted the incredibly small interaction, running to Midoriya's side even if there was still a villain up and about, though said villain was in shock at her partner being taken down so easily. The boy nodded quickly, and turned back to look at the other Udata student who saved them, just as she was flying down to ground level, keeping her eyes locked on the female villain. Thanks for the save, Izuku started, looking at the shorter blue-haired girl. Nijire-chan, that's my hero name. The girl they now knew, as Nijire smiled, shot two more spirals in the direction of the last standing villain, who quickly rose up a massive wall of cement, and blocked the attack. Earth manipulation or something? Cement, actually I think, at least, Toga informed me. Yeah, also, how about you keep blasting those weird shockwaves at her while I go, and try to stop her. You know, you distract her, and I'll strike, Izuku suggested, gripping the metal pipe in hand a little more firmly. You seemed capable enough before, so sure. I want to know about your quirk later though. My guess is that it enhances your reflexes. Nijire quickly began to shoot smaller shockwaves at the villain, while Izuku pulled Toga a little to the side. Alright, Toga, I'll rush in on the right side, and you go left, okay? Make as much noise as possible too, but stay safe. I'm gonna knock that bitch out. He ordered his new girlfriend, who nodded, and immediately began running towards the villain's left side. Izuku quickly followed through to the right side. Hey, you dumb bimbo, you ruined my freaking date, you bitch! Himiko yelled out the small amount of pent-up rage she was showing, as she sped towards the other woman, who instantly launched a piece of cement towards her. Toga only threw herself on the ground to dodge before continuing forward, and looking over at Izuku, who was quickly approaching the villain, as well. Midoriya was still just firing off shockwaves. Annoyingly though, the villain soon noticed Izuku again, and chucked multiple sharp pieces of cement his way. He didn't have time to dodge, so simply took the attack, and threw the pipe strongly towards the attacker, who had just turned to block yet another strike from Midoriya. The pipe just managed to hit the woman on the side of the head, and knock her out, as well. 2 first years, and a hero in training defeating 2 surprisingly powerful villains. That was gonna make the news. Yay, we did it! That was so cool! Midoriya excitedly yelled out, as she approached the blonde girl, who was simply staring at Izuku wide-eyed while he was plucking out sharp pieces of cement out of his arms and chest. Why do people always freaking rip my clothes? I'm gonna run out of shirts to wear soon, though maybe I should go shopping anyway. Izuku muttered quietly, grunting slightly, as he ripped out the last larger piece before looking over at the 2 girls. Midoriya was practically speechless at the sight, which was pretty disgusting considering the boy was bleeding all over now. Himiko just ran to him, and hugged him tightly. Thankfully the wounds had already healed, otherwise that would have probably hurt. Hey, I'm okay, Toga, don't worry. He immediately reassured the blonde, hugging her back with one arm. You're such a freaking idiot. I know you can heal, but that doesn't mean you need to risk getting hurt all the time. Himiko pulled back slightly, and pounded her fist softly into his chest. I told you to be careful, dumbass. She hugged him once more. I know, I'm sorry, I promise it won't happen again. I'll avoid getting hurt whenever I can now. Izuku sighed softly, this time firmly wrapping both his arms around Toga, holding her close. Midoriya was still just watching the two with a small smile on her face, the shock from before being completely gone. She would have interrupted, but she didn't want to ruin such a heartfelt moment. Though the moment was quickly interrupted by the police arriving along with Camie Woods and Empty Lady. Izuku, Toga, Midoriya spoke up, having picked up their names from their earlier conversations. We should go talk to the heroes and tell them what happened, especially you two since you were here before I arrived. Izuku gave the blue-haired girl a nod while Toga just kept on hugging him for a few more seconds before pulling back with a small pout, punching him once again before grabbing onto his face and pressing their lips together for the second time that day. For a first date, that was pretty damn good in his opinion. Dumbass, you're taking me on another date later for this. You owe me. The blonde poked his chest with each word, pulling him towards the waiting heroes right after. I'll happily take you on another date, Toga. The green-haired boy smiled, and continued to walk alongside Midoriya and his girlfriend, quickly realizing something else. Ah, freak. We don't have a license to use our quirks in public yet, so we're screwed here. And with Aizawa-sensei, huh? The blue-haired girl giggled, and shook her head instantly at his words. Yup, you still did the right thing though, and I had a feeling you two were Udata students too. First years, right? She asked with a curious smile. Toga nodded, and clung onto Izuku's arm a little more firmly, somehow already getting both protective of him, and jealous. That's so cool. I didn't see your quirk though, Toga, and yours is like some type of super healing, right? Does it have any other effects on you? Is that why you were so fast, and managed to fight the two alone? How strong are you? Where did you place in the entrance exam? Midoriya kept going with her onslaught of questions, thankfully being stopped by Empty Lady, and a few police officers who pulled her to the side. Camie Woods was looking straight at Izuku, and Toga though, ready to scold them for their actions. Izuku spoke first though. Alright, before you say anything, I was the only one who acted, and made use of my quirk. I took the villain's head on, and stalled for time while Toga here got people out from the nearby stores, and to safety. She didn't do anything wrong. I did, but even so, I never used my quirk during combat, only after I was injured when my body healed itself. I think that much should be evidenced by my bloody shirt, and all. The green-haired boy quickly explained to the now speechless Camie Woods, who managed to shake off the initial shock of the speech after a few short moments. I believe you, kid. I also think you did the right thing considering the situation you were in, but it was still risky. You should have only called the police, and ran away or hid, but still, you three did a good job holding those two villains back, and defeating them. Camie spoke with a small sigh. That doesn't mean you're out of trouble yet. From Midoriya-chan's loud voice earlier, I know you two are Udata students. The school will be informed of this. Izuku nodded, and gave a small smile, shrugging his shoulders lightly. That's fine by me though. I've got one question. Are those two villains well known or anything? They just had surprisingly strong quirks. I mean, with those they could have pulled something bigger than an ATM robbery, he asked, with Toga nodding along. They are actually. Those two have been on the run for a month or so. The names are Piledriver, and Carmen is wanted for robbery, theft, assault, and murder. Camie Woods informed the two heroes in training. Again, you did a good job taking them down. I didn't see any of it, but the cameras around apparently captured the footage which will also be sent to your school, the hero added on. Took down 2 villains, and got a girlfriend in a single day. That's good enough for me. Izuku chuckled softly, and looked down at Toga, who was staring up at him with a small smile. She was probably still angry at him for acting recklessly, but at least she wasn't too mad apparently. She most definitely was both happy and angry, because of the two officially dating, and because of him being an idiot. A few hours later, after a long exchange with the heroes, police officers, and Nijire, the 2 heroes in training had made it back to the university's ground. They had both been hoping to get some rest, but instead, Izuku and Toga were called to the principal's office, where the green-haired boy was informed of his punishment, while Himiko was very lightly scolded and then congratulated for her actions. Well, the 2 were actually congratulated for acting, but Izuku was scolded a lot more than his girlfriend. Thankfully, that was it for the 2 students, as they were allowed to head back to their dorms while the principal, Nizu, stayed in the office to review the newly sent footage recorded from the street cameras at the scene of the conflict. He was more surprised than anything at how quickly Midoriya and Himiko acted, as well as on how they handled the situation, especially Midoriya though. He could tell that the green-haired boy was someone to look out for, and, as soon as he finished reviewing the footage, the dog, mouse, bear thing, sent the video to the hulking man known as All Might, along with a small message. He's someone special. He might be just what you've been looking for. Keep him in mind. Jesus Christ, those reporters are like a mob of flies trying to swarm one massive pile of shit. I mean, not that All Might is a piece of shit, but he's attracting them here, you know? It's a joke. I don't want the teachers to hate me or make me clean up the entire dorm building again. That was unfair. Who makes someone who fought villains clean up, as a punishment? They even said I did good. It's bullshit. Izuku complained with a small, and slightly frustrated sigh, as he and Ochako walked to class, as the rest of the classmates were pretty much already in the classroom. They were just a few minutes away from being late, and it was kind of strange considering how everyone just rushed out, including Toga, who usually waited for Izuku. He just had expected her to wait even more now that they were dating, and pretty much the whole class knew, but only Uraraka waited for him. She just didn't know how much he genuinely appreciated that. It just would have been like high school or middle school all over again, walking alone, and doing everything alone really. Ochako had only laughed softly at Izuku's outburst, gently patting his shoulder. It makes sense if you think about it. You did good with the whole villain thing, but you came back with your shirt dripping blood, and if the teachers didn't punish you then it'd be like rewarding you for fighting villains, which we can't even do yet, Deku-kun. He smiled, and nodded, scratching over the back of his head. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, we're only heroes in training anyways. Oh, and sorry about coming into the dorms with ripped clothes, and soaked in blood. I didn't really have time to clean up. Midoriya spoke sheepishly. But maybe it was good. You guys will get used to seeing me like that then, which is most likely going to be often since I kinda just heal quickly. Oh. And talking about quirks, your zero gravity is absolutely freaking terrifying. Terrifying? Ochako squeaked out with a small blush, looking at Izuku with wide eyes. I mean like terrifyingly good, and all, but also really freaking scary. I mean, you could launch someone into space basically. Even I wouldn't be able to heal from that probably. I don't want to test that. He laughed softly, gently patting the brunette on the head. It's a really strong quirk, that's all I'm saying. You'll probably be a really good hero in the future. Now come on, we're gonna be late at this rate. And Aizawa-sensei is ruthless with his punishment. After only a few more minutes, the 2 students had made it to their classroom just in time, basically only a few seconds before the bell rang. Now they were simply sitting down while they waited for their teacher to start talking. Izuku was basically laying down on top of his desk while trying to sleep, and Himiko, his now girlfriend, was just making googly eyes at the back of his head, which made Camie and a few other girls in the class a little bit jealous. Right, so, you all performed fairly decently during the battle trials except for a few exceptions, these being Bakugo and Midoriya. Aizawa started with a sigh, zipping up his yellow sleeping bag, as he apparently got ready to just about throw himself on the floor and sleep. Bakugo, you need to stop acting like a little kid. You have talent, don't waste it, and also be more careful, and get a hold on your emotions. Almost destroying a classmate's arm is not something a hero would do. Work on handling your massive ego. The scruffy teacher spoke, looking at the explosive teen before redirecting himself towards Izuku. Katsuki scoffed, but nodded slowly, looking over at the green-haired boy with a frown. And Midoriya is the bigger problem child. You have potential. You're clearly skilled, and one of the better fighters in the class. But even so, that does not mean you can take these lessons lightly. You give it your all or I'll expel you, Aizawa said, tapping his fingers on the desk in front of him before shaking his head with a slight groan. You're smart. You know how to do that, and stay out of trouble. Getting your arm mangled and fighting villains illegally in a day isn't a good first look. Izuku gave the teacher a small smile, and thumbs up, letting him go on. Now you all have some homeroom business to take care of. The whole class went stiff at that. They were already absolutely terrified of Eraserhead since their first day with him. You have to pick a class representative. Deal with it yourselves, I don't care. Get it over before the period is done, the man said, slowly sliding down to the floor, and laying down in his sleeping bag. In just about milliseconds, most of the class had sprung out of their seats, yelling out, everyone attempting to claim the position. I want to be a class rep. Pick me. It's a job made for me, the manliest person here. Me too. I want to do it. Come on. I'll be the leader. You extras can follow behind me. Let me do it. Me. Izuku just let out a soft laugh at all the reactions as he leant back into his chair, shutting his eyes and tilting his head back in the hopes of sleeping, only to be pleasantly surprised by two soft cushions holding his head up. God, is that you? Wait, does God have a pie? Midoriya opened his eyes and smiled as he saw Toga holding his head while looking down at him, letting out a soft giggle. She proceeded to gently wrap her arms around his neck, as well, standing over him slightly. I mean, God could have a pie, you know, Izuku-in. Could be a man or a woman. Who knows? Himiko smiled, slowly taking her eyes off Izuku, and looking around at the classroom before stepping back from her position, only to walk around her boyfriend's seat. She simply plopped down on top of his desk, and poked his chest. Why aren't you trying to make a case for yourself, by the way? Pretty much everyone is. She was absolutely right. The only two students not actively involved in the yelling that was going on between the rest of the class were Izuku and Toga. Even the more reserved and quiet students like Todoroki and Shoji were making cases for themselves, although not with the same intensity as everyone else. Izuku only shrugged. I don't really want to be class president. It'll probably be too much work, and it'll mean that I'd have to start taking things a lot more seriously, which I don't really want. And just think about it. This way we have more time for dates, huh? No extra work means more time for doing random shit. He chuckled, smiling, as the blonde blushed very lightly, and giggled. That's true, but that also means there's more time for the other skanks here to try and take a shot at ya. I don't know how I feel about that chance, Toga complained. Nothing will happen, don't worry. I'm sure it'll be fine, plus, everyone knows we're dating. It doesn't really make sense for someone to try and keep flirting with me, he reassured her. OMG, that totes doesn't make sense, Isa baby. That won't stop anyone from trying to get some of your lit AF ass for themselves. Camie suddenly cut in from nowhere, making Izuku jump back slightly from the intrusion, while Himiko glared at the other girl. Toga was just about to absolutely tear into Camie just for that simple comment, but was interrupted by a loud yell coming from Tenya. Everyone please, the position of class representative is highly important. We can't have someone who only wants the position to look cool. It has responsibilities that come with it, and our chosen president must be someone who we trust fully and respect. Ida stood taller than the rest, and called out, raising his hand, as if asking for permission to speak. He had just spoken louder than everyone else anyways. He didn't really need to ask for permission. How do you want to choose a class rep then, Mr. Roboto? Jairu spoke from her desk. We shall take a democratic approach towards this, holding an election, and then deciding who will get the job by the amount of votes. At that, most of the class fell silent, and nodded their heads slowly. More than half the class was hesitant to accept the proposal, as it only lowered their chances at getting picked, while the other few members of the class were confident they'd win. I mean, would that even work? We don't really knock each other that well aside from a few people, Kirishima said after some thought. That is true, Jero. We've only known each other for a few short days. Sui gave her input into the conversation. Most people will just vote for themselves, won't they? Hagakure waved an invincible arm to call everyone's attention towards her. That only means that the person chosen for the job truly deserves it. If people put their trust behind someone, then it makes them reliable and suitable for the job. Tenya nodded furiously. Won't people just vote for their closest friends then? Like Midoriya, for example. He'll probably vote for Himiko because they started dating. Momo made her way into the conversation. Izuku just shrugged and smiled at her comment. It was kind of true anyways. He didn't really care much for the presidential position in their class. Oh, then why not narrow the list down to potential candidates, you know? Kinda like they do in America. Mina, who had been quiet, but constantly bouncing in her seat, spoke up. That would work out perfectly. Incredible idea, Ashido-san. Tenya beamed. Aizawa-sensei, is this alright with you? The teacher wrapped up in the sleeping bag only grunted in affirmation. As everyone agreed to just hold a vote for a certain group of people, the class began to shout out who they thought should get the position of class president. The few nominated were Momo, Tenya, Izuku, Todoroki, Bakugo, and surprisingly Camie. Just a few minutes later the votes were counted. Momo Yaoyoro's 6 votes, Izuku Midoriya 4 votes, Tenya Ida 4 votes, Camie Utsushimi 3 votes, Katsuki Bakugo 2 votes, Shido Todoroki 2 votes. Bakugo, as expected, was absolutely fuming, but doing a surprisingly good job at holding back, while Izuku just stared at the board in disbelief. He was not expecting to get any votes whatsoever, except maybe one from Himiko or Camie, but that was it. After a few moments of silence, Momo finally decided to speak up. So I guess that means I'm class president. What shall we do to decide the vice president? A vote between Midoriya and Ida? She suggested. Definitely not. Give the job to Tenya. He's much smarter than me, a lot more responsible, and will actually take the job seriously. Anyone written on that board apart from me would do a good job. Midoriya quickly cuts in, only hoping to be finally excused from having to even be a participant on the issue. He wasn't just being lazy, he really just thought other people would be better, and he even thought that about Bakugo. Oh, I mean, if it's Ida then it's fine by me. Ochako piped in for her friend, showing a massive smile. I shall agree, as Ida-san has already been showing off his leadership skills from the very start of the year. He organized this voting system to work and brought the class together. He will do a fine job. Even Tokoemi, the usually completely stoic classmate, spoke up. Bakugo growled lightly at the support the glasses-wearing teen was getting, while Tenya just looked over the class with a proud expression. Momo had a small smile on her face at the setup for class representatives, and on the other hand, Camie had just shrugged it off and went right back to pestering Izuku. And Toga, Todoroki kept the same neutral expression throughout the entire discussion. The class quickly agreed on Tenaya as the vice president, and the homeroom was done soon after. The rest of the day went on fairly regularly except for the fact that there was a breach at the university, but thanks to Izuku's and Tenya's quick thinking, nobody got hurt or had any problems. The real issue was at the gate. It was completely pulverized and crumbled, almost turned to dust. I'm fairly certain this wasn't just any reporter. This was an attack, Nizu. Aizawa stared at the disintegrated gate, shaking his head slightly. I noticed the first year's schedule is gone too. We should switch up the activities to avoid risks. You are correct by saying this was intentional, but I believe we can go on with our regular schedule, the ESJ, and everything. We will just have to enlist more help. Nizu started, sitting on the scruffy teacher's shoulder in silence before cackling madly. Oh, I know exactly who will be of help for this. We'll be more than okay if we have them, and are wary of our situation. We catch some villains, and show the incredible level of security in the university. That'll do nicely. Rescue training? The entire class asked in sync, as Aizawa stood in front of the students, nodding his head lazily. Yes, rescue training. We'll be heading to another facility, and conduct the class there. Aizawa started, tapping his fingers against the desk rhythmically. We're going to be joined by a few more people to help though. First will be All Might, as he is one of your usual teachers, as well as myself, and another hero we will meet at the facility. Finally, you'll be joined by 3 third-year students also known as the Big Three. At those last few words, the door swung open, and the 3 mentioned students walked in. The one leading the group was a muscular-looking blonde who was about Izuku's height, with spiky-looking hair at the front and an extremely plain face. He wore his hero costume, which was mostly white and blue along with a red cape. Next was a hunched-over student with a nervous expression, who had shaggy blue hair and basically hid behind the blonde, also wearing his costume. It was a purple top with some small pouches, a long white scarf, as well as a white skirt. At least it looked like a skirt. It was cool anyways. The last student of the 3 was, well, Izuku. Toga-chan, we're joining you for the USJ thing. Isn't that exciting? Isn't it? Oh, I can't wait to see you in action again. You were so cool when we fought those villains. Nijire was the last student of the Big Three. The bubbly blue-haired girl immediately spoke up, giving the 2 mentioned students an excited wave. Toga quickly giggled, and happily waved back at Nijire while Izuku gave a small nod, and smiled before turning back to look at his girlfriend, raising an eyebrow at her. Are you trying to match her excitement or something, Toga? He chuckled softly, ignoring the other 2 members of the Big Three, as they started to introduce themselves. Well, if I match it then maybe she'll tone it down a bit. I don't think us or the class can deal with her bubbly personality and questions for the whole day. Himiko shrugged her shoulders and smiled before jumping back a bit, as the costumed blonde suddenly appeared between Izuku and her. Toga just got startled, while Izuku reacted a lot quicker than her, and quickly shot his fist forward, hitting the blonde square in the face with a strong jab. Shit, sorry. You just startled me. And where the freak did you even come from? Is your quirk just interrupting conversations or something? The green-haired teen quickly said, pulling his fist back in worry. The blonde just still stood there, but his usual smile was replaced by a slightly more shocked expression. He managed to hit me? Are his reflexes even better than mine? And he's just in his first year? He thought in slight shock, and wondered, quickly recovering from it. Don't worry about it. Nice punch too, by the way, and you'll have to guess better than that to find out my quirk. Now, pay attention. You already missed introductions. He He walked back to the front of the class, leaving Izuku to just sit there. The rest of the students were just quiet, as the boy had hit their upperclassmen just at first sight, and in their first interaction. At least all of them were quiet except for Camie, and Kyoka, who couldn't help but laugh, and surprisingly Bakugo, who had snickered lightly. Alright, to start again for those who didn't hear, we're U's big three, meaning the top students in the entire university. I'm Mirio Togata. Mirio started, looking back, and grabbing a hold of the other boy's shoulder, bringing him closer to the front of the class. This is Tamaki Amajiki, and she's Nijire Hato. We will be joining you in your rescue training today. We'll mostly be giving you all advice instead of actively participating with you in your work, and also, completely unrelated, if anyone wants to fight me, I'm always open for a spar. The entirety of the class kept quiet, as the three upperclassmen kept talking until Aizawa cut in, and simply told everyone to either get changed into their hero costumes or gym uniforms if they didn't want to use their suits. Soon enough, everyone had gathered outside, and were wearing their hero costumes. Even Izuku had his own, as it had somehow already been repaired by someone in the support department. Someone by the name of Hatsum had apparently just taken it upon herself to fix the suit up completely, though there wasn't enough time for the green-haired teen's batons or any of his other gadgets to be repaired. He'd be completely unarmed for the exercise, and he didn't care at all for the sole reason of him finally getting a mask to go along with his costume. A/N. Deadpool's mask, but in a dark forest green color. Everyone, get into two parallel lines divided by gender, please. We need an organized entry into the bus to show our professionalism. As Udata students, we must make our university proud at any opportunity, Ida yelled out, as he stood beside Momo, just fully committing to his role as the class vice president. Ida-san, you should calm down. I don't think it's that type of bus. Yayarosa smiled sadly, and patted the spectacled boy on the back, as the bus arrived. She was right. There was no order needed for it. That only caused Tenya to sulk even more, as he let his head hang down to face the ground. Anyways, let's get on the bus everyone. Don't push, and just get inside in an orderly fashion. Everyone obliged, and only a few minutes later the class was on their way to the USJ along with their teacher, Nijire, Tamaki, and Mirio. Izuku sat near the middle of the bus in between Toga and Tamaki, while in front of him sat Tsuyu, Mirio, Kirishima, Uraraka, and Momo. Midoriya-san, we haven't spoken much at all, and I usually like to say what's on my mind. You seem weirdly strong when you only have a healing quirk. How does that even work? The teen in question smiled, and let out a soft sigh. Oh well, Aijiri, call me Tsu. Okay, call me Izuku then. Now Tsu, since I have a healing quirk, it pretty much regulates my body entirely to be in peak physical condition. I don't really know the reason for this, but I'm also stronger than the average person should be, and all too. The only thing that could explain something like my strength would be that, as a kid I tested out my quirk a lot, and by that I mean that I just hurt myself continuously to test what its capabilities were. By doing that, and breaking bones, I'm pretty sure my bones have gotten denser and stronger, and my muscles have also gotten more resistant just from injuring myself all the time, so yeah, that must be it. Izuku explained, shrugging slightly at Tsu, who tilted her head slightly to the side, and nodded in understanding. Damn, I'm glad we're in the same class, Midoriya. We both have quirks that aren't really noticeable, but are super strong anyways, though it is kind of disappointing that we don't have anything really flashy to show off, you know? Kirishima joined the conversation, and just as Izuku was about to respond, Mirio cut in. Well, if you think about it, you two can still be great heroes even when your quirks aren't flashy at all. Just think of people like Sir Naitai. His quirk is mostly mental, but he's still greatly successful. Or your teacher Eraserhead. His eyes glow red, and his hair kinda defies gravity when he uses his quirk, but that isn't really flashy at all, is it? I'm sure you'll both be great. Yeah, that is true. Sometimes I wish I had a less flashy quirk. That would make everything so much easier. Tamaki sulked from Izuku's side, pulling his hood over his head to completely cover himself. He really was shy apparently. And even so, not everyone with flashy quirks will be famous. I mean, think about that bitch that can make sparkles with his hands. He'll never be popular if he's that much of an asshole all the time. Toga giggled, as she pointed over at Bakugo, who managed to listen in on their conversation, and immediately got angry. The freak did you say, bitch? I'm freaking better than you in every way, and you want to talk shit? Hey, don't call Himiko a bitch, freak face. How can you say you're better than her when she won her training exercise, and you lost, huh? Might I add that you lost pretty freaking badly to a loser like me too. Izuku spoke with a smirk, only angering Bakugo more, as his palms gave off more explosions, starting to slowly melt away at the metal railing he held onto. What a vulgar conversation, Yayarosa sighed. What? I think it's funny, and Deku-kun and Bakugo-san always insult each other. Momo, you should be used to it by now. Uraraka giggled. Used to it by now? We've only been classmates for a few days, Uraraka-san. Yeah, more than enough time to get used to it. The bubbly brunette smiled. The second Ochako finished her sentence, the bus came to a halt. Alright, everyone got off the bus, and stopped talking. Midoriya, Bakugo, I don't want to hear you talking like that again or you're both getting punished. Now hurry up. Their scruffy teacher called out, leading the way out of the bus, as everyone else simply followed along. Soon, the entire class along with the 3 third years were inside the facility, attentively listening to what the space hero, 13, was saying. Or at least they were listening until a weird purple and black vortex/portal appeared in the middle of the facility, right at the plaza. What is that? Oh, is this part of the training exercise? I'm already pumped up, Kaminari asked with a grin. Maybe we are being taught how to deal with random situations, as well. This is exemplary training coming from you. It's marvelous, Tenya said. No, those are villains. 13, get the students to the entrance. Everyone, stay together. Nijire, Togata, and Tamaki, protect the students. Aizawa immediately recognized the danger, slipping on his yellow goggles, and springing forward, and down the stairs, moving straight to where the villains were located. I don't see All Might here, I see Racerhead, and 13. Did we get the schedule wrong? Or maybe it changed? It doesn't matter anyways, just stick to the plan. I'm sure if we kill a couple of students All Might will come running in. A man with hands all over his body, and light blue hair spoke, snapping his fingers, as more villains continued to appear through the portals. Every single one of them getting ready to follow the orders they had been given. They were ready to kill the students. Kurojiri, get to it. Suddenly, the portal disappeared from sight until a voice spoke up from behind the group of startled students. Hello students. We apologize for the intrusion, but this is all very vital to our goal. We, the League of Villains, have invited ourselves here today in the hopes of meeting the symbol of peace, and my part in this is to scatter all of you. So please, just stay still. The villain was quickly interrupted a second later by Kirishima, and Bakugo rushed him in a coordinated attack, only for the two to be completely dodged. It looked almost effortless. As a follow-up to that attack, 13 attempted to use his quirk to subdue the villain, only for it to backfire, as Kurojiri formed a portal behind the space hero, injuring her with her own quirk. The back of her costume was almost entirely ripped. Now that the annoyances are dealt with, you all must suffer. The villain suddenly was hit from the back as Mirio appeared behind him, delivering a strong punch to Kurojiri's metal body, managing to actually dent it, and push the warp quirk user forward. Unfortunately, the punch launched the villain right to where Izuku stood with Yayorozu, Kaminari, Kyoka, and Toga, which ended in Kurojiri quickly using his quirk to cover the 5 students in the dark mist. Izuku did the only thing that came to mind, and quickly pushed the 2 people closest to him, as hard as possible, knocking them away from where the mist was covering them. He only managed to push Kyoka and Toga out of the way. No, Izuku, Yamamoto, Kaminari. Just as the 2 girls got their words out, the 3 other students disappeared without a trace, and the villain was punched once again by Mirio, this time slamming both his fists against the metal plating of Kurojiri. Bring them back, the blonde yelled out, holding the villain down against the ground firmly. I'm afraid I cannot do that though. Even if my part in this partially failed, those 3 students are doomed. You should forget about them already. Kurojiri managed to speak out with a strained voice, and out of impulse, Himiko ran up to the villain, and delivered a hard kick to his body. Even as the villain was subdued, the class could not help but panic slightly. They lost 3 of their classmates, and had no clue how to find them. Shut up, asshole, don't freaking listen to him, Toga spoke through gritted teeth, looking back at her classmates with an incredibly angry expression. An incredibly angry expression which didn't hide the panic that Himiko clearly felt, as well. Toga-san is correct. We must be hopeful that our classmates will be okay. Let us stick together for now. Ida attempted to take charge of the situation. Kirishima, Siro, help carry 13 to the entrance. Everyone else keeps each other close and protected. Mirio, should I try to find Izuku and the others? I'm the fastest here, and I'll be able to see them from up high, Nijire suggested, already hovering above the ground. The blonde hero in question quickly nodded, and watched, as Nijire flew off before turning to face the other students. Tamaki, come here, and hold this villain down. I know you had crab for lunch, so hold him down with a pincer. And you, the explosive quirk guy, help your senpai out. Tamaki and Bakugo quickly obliged, and got into their positions, with the older of the 2 firmly holding on to Kurojiri, while the explosive teen held his hands up to the villain's body threateningly. Mirio, on the other hand, quickly sprinted down to help Aizawa with the larger group of villains, leaving the class by themselves for the time being. They were a large group, so the risk was minimal. That didn't mean that the class wouldn't be attacked, as a small group of villains somehow managed to slip away from the plaza, and were moving towards them. Wait, guys, some of the villains got away. What do we do? Mina panicked. We must protect 13, and keep this villain subdued. We fight for our classmates now, Shoji spoke, stepping towards the front of the group. Even if we might have more numbers over them, we must still be careful, and Ida-san, you're the fastest one here. You must get more help from the university. We're only students, and a teacher now. We need help. But as class president, I cannot leave you all here. I need to No, we'll be fine, Ida. Just go, and get help. We can protect ourselves for now, Ojiro yelled, and pushed the spectacled boy towards the entrance roughly, making sure that he got the message. A moment after that, Ida had rushed out the entrance, albeit regretfully. Now, the class had other problems to deal with, as the group of villains was only getting closer, and closer to them. Holy shit, Izuku yelled, as he, Kaminari, and Yaoyorozu suddenly appeared away from the rest of their class, and midair, quickly falling down to the ground. They were lucky the fall wasn't anything too massive. Ow, you guys okay? He quickly asked, standing up, and looking back at his two classmates. No, not really. I mean, freak, we just got separated from the rest of the class in a villain-infested facility. What are we supposed to do? Kaminari instantaneously began to panic, walking up to Izuku, and grabbing onto the collar of his costume, shaking him harshly. Jesus, man, just relax, let go. He quickly grabbed hold of Kaminari's hands, and pushed him back, letting out a sigh. I get that we're not in the best place right now, but we can get back to the entrance if we start moving now. We just gotta avoid the villains, so relax, we'll be fine. I'm sure the rest of the class already called for backup, Izuku said, looking around the area they were in. They were in a completely dry place, and surrounded by mountains, which thankfully didn't really hurt them or put them at a disadvantage. The terrain would just be slightly harder to maneuver with all the boulders and shifted grounds. Hey Yaoyorozu, you okay? Yes, I'm fine, or as fine as I can be in this situation. The girl shook her head, also simply looking around the area. You're right though, Midoriya-san. We need to get back to the entrance right now, but we still need to defend ourselves if we run into villains. Do you need me to create something for you? Or do you need something, Kaminari-san? Momo asked, grabbing a hold of her encyclopedia, and quickly skimming through it. Yeah, just something I can use with one hand. I don't really care what, just nothing too heavy or lethal. Izuku nodded, looking over at the leotard-wearing girl with wide eyes, as she simply pulled a katana out of her arm before handing it to him. Yaoyorozu, you do understand that I said nothing lethal, right? I did, but we're fighting against villains here, and I've seen you fight hand to hand. You're almost an expert at it. If anything, use the sword for intimidation more than anything else. Now again, Kaminari? Need something? The blonde in question quickly shook his head. We're good to go then. If we move towards the plaza, we'll be able to see where the entrance is, and sneak past. I'd say that's our best bet. Izuku, and Kaminari simply nodded along, with Izuku giving the katana a few experimental slashes and swings. He would have preferred a baton, but he didn't want to ask Momo for something else. He knew how her quirk worked, and there was no point in tiring her out. Yeah, let's get going now. We should hurry unless we want to get found out, you know? Midoriya said, walking up to Momo and Kaminari. Ha, I guess we're here to spoil your little plans, kid. I'm surprised that none of you have pissed your pants yet. You know we're villains, right? A booming voice suddenly spoke up from behind a large boulder, revealing a group of about 10 villains. Most of them were seemingly mutant types, meaning they'd be easier to handle, while the rest were complete wild cards. The three students froze as they heard them. Freak, and yeah, you're villains, but I've got a freaking katana, scrotum face. You wanna go first? Izuku quickly responded, pulling his mask on, and tightening the grip on his weapon, glancing back at his classmates. Kaminari, protect Yaoyorozu, and Yaoyorozu, make a flare gun, and fire it. That way the rest will know we're okay. The two others shook their panic off, and nodded, with Momo quickly grabbing a hold of her encyclopedia, and looking for the creation's components. What an annoying kid, you're dying first now. One of the villains grunted, and began to rush towards Izuku along with two others. Two of the three were mutant types, with one of them having 4 arms while the other had 2 pairs of black wings attached to his back. The third villain was a woman with abnormally long hair, which already gave Midoriya a hint as to what her quirk was. Didn't you hear me? I have a freaking sword, dumbass. Izuku quickly sidestepped the first villain's punch before ducking under another, and sweeping one of his feet, knocking the man with 4 arms down. Only a second later though, a long strand of hair was sent flying past Izuku, and towards Kaminari and Yaoyorozu, but was stopped, as Izuku quickly reacted, and slashed the hair with his sword, immediately swinging the sword towards his side, as he heard movement. The moment Izuku swung his sword, he heard a pained yell, and looked in the direction of the noise, finding the winged villain clutching his wrist, as his hand was completely missing. That was the exact reason as to why Izuku didn't want a sword. Heroes didn't kill or dismember villains, and he just did one of the two. He had no time to rest or reflect on what he had just done, as he was quickly grabbed and thrown off to the side by the villain with the hair quirk, smashing him against a boulder while the other two students continued to stick together, only now they had a few of the villains closing in on them. Shit, Midoriya, freak, Yayarozu, what do we do? I can't use my quirk if you're this close. I'll shock you too. Momo's eyes widened at his words before she knelt down, and a creation sprung out of her back, a black sheet which quickly covered her body. Do it! Midoriya is farther away, he'll be fine. Kaminari immediately nodded, and electricity spread out from his body, catching 4 of the approaching villains in his attack. 1.3 million volts. Thankfully, the attack didn't hurt Izuku or Momo, as the green-haired teen had already recovered, and was a good few meters away fighting against the villain with multiple arms, and the villain with the long hair. Yayarozu, on the other hand, immediately sprung out from the shock-resistant blanket, and shot a flare up into the sky, only to suddenly pull out a non-lethal shotgun, aiming it at the other 4 approaching villains, and knocking them back. Even if the gun wasn't lethal, it still hurt like a freaking bitch, as demonstrated by the villains, who were already down on the floor clutching their chests and stomachs. Izuku was doing just as well as Momo and Kaminari, as he managed to knock out the mutant villain by smashing the blunt end of the katana against his temple. Now the only villain that was left was the woman, whose hair was forming a shield around her. Hey, are you guys doing okay? Midoriya, we're fine. Can you handle her or do you need help? Momo quickly responded. Yay. Kaminari didn't respond coherently though, as his quirk had managed to temporarily short-circuit his brain. He was just giving a thumbs up. No, don't worry, I'm okay, Izuku called back out, continuously slashing at the tendrils of hair which shot out towards him, though a moment later, he was overwhelmed, as they began to shoot out from all directions. He probably would have been screwed if it wasn't for the sudden yellow spiral that was shot at the villain. He only knew one person with a quirk like that. Freaking thank God, you're freaking incredible, Nijire, he laughed, looking up at the girl with a smile. You guys are okay, the blue-haired girl yelled back down at them, quickly descending, and running up to the 3 students, looking around at the knocked-out villains, as well as the one still clutching his wrist while his missing hand sat beside him. Oh God, what happened to him? A Yayarozu kind of made me a katana, and that asshole tried to come up behind me. I kinda just reacted, and that happened, but he'll be fine. As soon as the heroes come they'll all be taken to the hospital, and then prison, I'm guessing also, Yayarozu. I'm gonna just call you Momo. Your name is way too long otherwise, Izuku said, cleaning the bloody katana off with the sleeve of his suit before taking off his mask and stuffing it into his pocket, letting out a sigh. That's fine. I've got to say though, as intimidating as these villains looked, they weren't really much of a threat. Mano started. Obviously I still believe we should go meet with the others, but we shouldn't be so scared of the villains, as before. We know we can beat them. Yeah, sure, but that doesn't mean we should just go and face them, right? We should still just go about this as silently as possible, especially because I don't think I can manage another strong attack like that. It already short-circuited my brain, and if it happens again, I'll be just out of the fight for a while. Kaminari suddenly spoke up, as well. Ah yeah, I was wondering what was going on with your face even. It was pretty hilarious though, ha. Izuku laughed softly before falling quiet, as the 3 others simply stared at him. But yeah, I agree with Denki here. Let's just go about this as efficiently as possible, and run back to the entrance. I'm honestly worried about the rest, and Himiko. Definitely worried about Himiko, he sighed. Don't worry about them too much, Izuku. When I left them to look for you guys, they were doing okay. Tamaki is in charge of them, and, as shy as he may be, he's really strong too. I'm sure they're doing okay. Nijire smiled confidently. Thankfully, Nijire was completely right. The rest of the class had quickly managed to defeat the approaching villains while still holding Kurojiri down, and they were simply still huddled together, just as it was instructed. Though they couldn't help but worry about their classmates and teachers. 13 wasn't doing so well, but he was alive, while Aizawa was still fighting the rest of the villains at the plaza with Mirio, both of whom were doing extremely well against such a large group. It was strange though, as the supposed leader of the group, the man with hands stuck all over his body simply wasn't moving at all, and neither was the monstrous creature beside him. The only unknowns were Izuku, Yayarozu, Kaminari, Nijire, and Ida now. The first 4 were the most worrying, as they were most likely in danger, while Ida was still getting help. The only worrying part about Tenya was if he'd be fast enough to help save everyone. Yo, shorty, do you, think I's a baby, and the rest are okay? Camie walked over to Toga, who was clearly the most on edge with the whole situation, as she was simply staring the plaza down before looking at the taller blonde. I don't know, Bimbo, we all know that they're capable of protecting themselves, and Nijire went to look for them too, but Izuku is a self-sacrificing idiot. If any of them gets hurt, he'll be the first just because he knows he can heal, but that still doesn't freaking mean he should let himself get hurt. He's so stupid, and he just pushed me and Gyro out of the way, and I'm just worried. I'm obviously freaking worried. Himiko sighed frustratingly, roughly running her hands through her hair in an attempt to calm herself down. He is an idiot Elmeo, but I don't think he'll be too stupid this time around. Like, he cares about you, and he knows you don't like seeing him hurt, so he'll be more careful probs. Toga raised an eyebrow at Camie before smiling softly, nodding her head a small bit. Yeah, that makes sense, thanks, but I'm still gonna worry about that stupid asshole, and I'm still not okay with you wanting to date him too. He's my boyfriend. The shorter blonde slowly turned back to her usual Yandra-like self. Camie giggled and shrugged. I'm not the only girl who wants Izubaby, shorty. There's some other hoes who totally want his lit AF ass. Just as Himiko was about to respond though, Gyro suddenly laughed and smiled, throwing her fist up in victory, as one of her earphone jacks was anchored to the ground. Freak! They're okay. The three are coming back here with me, Gyro. They just have to cut through the plaza, and they'll make it. Wait, what? How did they already make their way back here? Can you see them from here? Ciro stepped away from the group a slight bit, and looked over at the plaza, pointing over to the side. Yeah, I see them. Look! The rest of the class quickly joined Ciro, and managed to find their missing classmate's location, though just as the four were attempting to sneak around the plaza, the villain's leader decided to act, simply raising up his hand. And in that simple action, the monstrous bird-like creature rushed forward, and managed to catch both Aizawa and Mirio off guard, both of whom were smashed against the ground several times before the blonde third year managed to get away. Aizawa didn't though, as he lay limp on the ground after the attack. Jesus Christ, what the hell is that thing? Are Togata and Aizawa-sensei okay? I don't know, Aizawa isn't moving, and I can't see Togata. Both Tamaki and Bakugo let themselves be distracted a little bit, as they heard that piece of information, taking their focus off Kurogyri, as the two looked over in the general direction of the plaza. As they did, the villain managed to warp away from their grasp before quickly warping two students away from the group. I'll kill you, you freak! Bakugo rushed forward in an attempt to explode the villain, as Kurogyri made use of his quirk, disappearing alongside Camie and Ojiro, who were teleported to the center of the plaza. I let myself get distracted, I am sorry. Tamaki immediately began sulking before being slapped on the back by Kirishima. We all did, man. We gotta get down there, and help them while we can. We can't let them get hurt anymore. The spiky red-haired teen spoke, immediately starting to move towards the plaza with the rest of the class following suit, leaving the unconscious villains behind. Tamaki and Bakugo stood frozen for a few moments before moving forward. As well, Shoji stayed behind to care for 13. Come on, we're almost away from here. Guys, just keep moving, Kaminari said nervously, keeping himself crouched down, as he along with Izuku, Momo, and Nijire snuck around the plaza. The four kept on moving until they heard a villain speak up with a maniacal laugh. Ha! How'd you like that, Eraserhead? How's my final boss, huh? Both you and that blonde kid are nothing against my Nomu. Nomu? What the freak is a Nomu? Izuku whispered, slowly peeking towards the central plaza, and gritting his teeth, his eyes widening, as well. This isn't good. One of the villains freaking almost killed Aizawa. And Mirio, I couldn't see Mirio though. But Aizawa is on the ground, he isn't moving. Everyone's eyes widened, as well, and they made the same move as Izuku, taking a quick look at the central plaza before crouching back down. I see Mirio, he's still fighting, but he's looking battered, and that monster is just standing still now. What show? Suddenly, the same maniacal voice, as before, was heard again, which urged the four students to look over at the plaza again. Ha! I was wondering where you were, Kurogyri. It's a good thing you brought these stupid kids, or else I would have pulverized you. The apparent leader laughed. Yes, Tamura Shigaraki. I was caught off guard by the rest of the students, and they managed to pin me down. One even managed to escape to UA. There's no doubt that he'll bring backup. Kurogyri spoke, throwing the two kidnapped students to the ground with his warp portals. One escaped, huh? If you weren't our way out of here, I really would kill you now. But now that we know All Might's coming, let's crush his spirit before killing him. Let me kill one of those two. How about we start with the tail guy? Shigaraki grinned, slowly moving towards the two students on the ground, both of them too shocked to even move, which was the exact same case regarding Kaminari and the rest, as they all stayed frozen in position, or so they thought. Hey asshole, how about you start off with me, huh? Think of it as a test fight before All Might comes here and freaks you up. Sounds good? Izuku yelled, as he quickly sprinted out of the spot he was hiding at, holding his katana in hand, as he stared over at the light blue-haired man, taking a quick glance towards Mirio and Aizawa before looking over at Camie and Ojiro. Their teacher was still flat on the ground, but his chest was rising up and down, which thankfully meant he was breathing. Mirio, on the other hand, was still fighting against the remaining villains, as the hulking bird creature simply stood there motionless once again, His two classmates were staring at him with shock evident in their faces, as Ojiro was completely emotionless while the blonde girl shook her head furiously at Izuku, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. She was clearly begging him not to do anything, but it was already done. He couldn't have pulled back now. "Ah, what's this? You're trying to play hero now? I thought you Dada students were supposed to be smart, and here you thought it was a good idea to offer yourself up as a joke." Shigaraki turned to look over at Izuku, who in turn looked right back over at him. "Holy shit, you're freaking ugly. My god, I mean freak. I called a guy scrotum face back when we were teleported, but I was completely wrong. That's just you," Izuku taunted with a laugh, twirling the katana in hand a slight bit. "Just wow. You need some freaking chapstick for them dry ass lips or just some full body moisturizer because freak, man you're crusty as shit." The villain's eye twitched at Izuku's comments before raising up a hand, staring at the green-haired teen. "Shut up. Now I'm gonna give you what you asked for, idiot Nomu. Kill him." The bird-like villain quickly dashed towards Izuku at the command, throwing a wild punch at the teen which was narrowly avoided by Izuku ducking, and then rolling out of the way, staring with wide eyes at the creature. "Shit, that was close. Izuku, how are you this much of an idiot? You shouldn't have moved." Nijire suddenly reappeared, blasting the creature with her quirk, as she flew above Izuku, clearly scolding him for his actions. "If I didn't move, Camie or Ojiro would be dead. I had to," the teen yelled back, once again narrowly avoiding another punch from the creature before Nijire managed to blast the monster again, launching him out of the plaza momentarily. "Why are you damn idiots so annoying? Just when everything was about to go well. Nomu, kill that girl. Leave the kid alone." Shigaraki quickly reacted, and yelled, with the Nomu now focusing on Nijire who still simply flew and avoided the creature's attacks. Izuku immediately turned his attention back to Shigaraki once he wasn't being targeted, immediately moving towards him, as Shigaraki did the same, dashing forward with an arm stretched out, aiming for Izuku's head. The two were inches away from touching each other before Shigaraki's entire left side was completely encased in ice, leaving him motionless right in front of Izuku. "Midoriya, are you well?" Todoroki slid over to Izuku on his ice, making a sudden appearance along with the rest of the class. Midoriya quickly nodded before looking around at the rest of the class, who had helped fight the remaining villains Mirio was up against, and were now crowding either him or Aizawa. Mirio had immediately gone to help Nijire fight the Nomu, while Kirishima, Bakugo, and Tamaki stared Kurojiri down, with the villains still holding Camie and Ojiro hostage. "I'm fine, thanks for the help. Are you all doing okay? Where's Himiko?" The girl in question immediately walked up to Izuku and hugged him, with the boy quickly reciprocating. "You're fine, you're okay. That's good." He smiled, looking down at his girlfriend before quickly pushing her back, as he heard ice cracking behind him and felt a hand touch his arm. He quickly turned around and was met with Shigaraki, who had somehow already escaped the ice and had managed to get the jump on him and his classmates. "I told you were dead, brat. You shouldn't play hero if you can't live up to it," the villain snarled, suddenly being warped back by Kurojiri, who had opted to help his leader rather than keep the hostages. Izuku quickly clutched his arm, and saw his skin cracking, and turning to dust, gritting his teeth, and letting out a groan at the painful feeling, as just a few seconds later half the skin on his arm was gone before it began to regenerate again. "Freak, that was painful so, a quirk that disintegrates things, huh? Good freaking thing I've got a regeneration quirk." The teen sighed out, as he ignored all the calls from his classmates and girlfriend, looking back over at Shigaraki, who once again stared him down. This time though, the villain had a crazy grin on his face. "Healing quirk, eh? You'd make a good Noma." "I need that quirk," Shigaraki said, glancing back at Kurojiri before turning to look over towards Noma. "Master Shigaraki, I highly advise that we take our leave now. We're only 3 against an entire class of students." "Shut it. Noma, get me that brat." Shigaraki ignored Kurojiri, pointing at Izuku, and as expected, Noma dashed forward towards Izuku in an attempt to grab him. Nijire and Mirio both fell to the ground, as the monster left them, the two of them clearly exhausted after fighting and overusing their quirks. Midoriya waited a few seconds until the Nomu was right in front of him, quickly slashing his sword against the monster's arm, and cutting off half of it, only to rapidly avoid another one of its punch before moving back, and away from the rest of his classmates, who were all safe by the looks of things. Even Camie and Ojiro were with them. To Izuku's surprise, the Nomu's arm regenerated in a matter of seconds, and began to rush him again, the monster managing to punch the teen on the chest, caving his chest in, as Izuku fell to the ground, clutching his front in pain, as the katana fell to the floor next to him. "God freak, that's not good," he groaned out, staring up at Nomu, as the creature grabbed his leg, and started to drag him towards Shigaraki. As he was dragged across the ground, Izuku glanced at the class who had moved back even further away from him, all of them staring at the creature, and at him in fear. The entirety of the class was completely frozen, with most of them simply standing there with their mouths open while some had tears in their eyes. Izuku quickly looked away from them only to avoid seeing Himiko's reaction, attempting to sit up, as his caved-in chest quickly regenerated. Freak, 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 let go of me, you freaking overgrown bird. Izuku began to punch at the Nomu's arm, only doing minimal damage to it, as he kept trying to free himself from its hold, ignoring Shigaraki's laughter coming from close by. There's no use struggling. This Nomu was created to fight All Might. What can a brat with a regeneration quirk like yours do? The villain continued to laugh, slowly approaching both Izuku and Nomu, as the two edged closer, only to be stopped once again by Todoroki's eyes. The heterochromatic teen had saved him twice already. Izuku quickly reacted, as the Nomu's arm and legs were frozen, mustering all the strength he could to punch at the arm, grabbing him and breaking the ice, shattering and destroying the Nomu's arm along with it before quickly moving back, staring at the monster, and Shigaraki still. Todoroki quickly joined Izuku's side, handing the regenerative quirk his sword before the two were also joined by Bakugo surprisingly, who growled at Izuku before looking in the direction of the villains. A split second later they were also joined by an exhausted Mirio and Nijire. Freak, we're really going to fight this thing? Apparently. We don't have much of a choice. It's already regenerating. I think we have a chance, Mirio and I were able to get some good hits in. Just freaking shut up and get ready. That ugly freak is about to break the ice. Just as was predicted, the Nomu quickly shattered the ice and turned around to face the group of students again, all of whom were staring the monster, Shigaraki, and Kurojiri down, with the two other villains getting ready to assist the creature. Nomu, kill all of them except the green-haired on. In a matter of seconds, the doors to the facility were completely destroyed, with Tenya leading the group of heroes consisting of All Might, Midnight, Snipe, and Cementos. Where are my students? All Might's voice boomed through the facility, capturing the attention of everyone in the plaza, as the hero dashed forward and grabbed hold of every single student in the area, dragging them back to the entrance before reappearing in a flash in front of the villains. The other heroes got to work apprehending the remaining villains in the facility. Why you're finally here, ha! The symbol of peace will finally meet his end. Shigaraki surprisingly only smiled at All Might's entrance, quickly snapping his fingers afterwards. Nomu, kill him. The monster immediately rushed forward and towards All Might, throwing wild punches at the hero while the hero fought back valiantly, both of them being locked in an intense fight which shook the USJ with each blow the villain and hero traded. The two powerhouses kept on fighting for what seemed like hours, as the class watched on in complete silence until finally, All Might landed a final blow which launched the Nomu out of the facility, ruling the number one hero victorious, as he stood strong, staring at the two remaining villains, Shigaraki and Kurojiri. So, villains, now that your pet is gone, what will you do? Try to fight me too? All Might spoke to the villains, watching them carefully, as both Shigaraki and Kurojiri stood frozen on their feet, with the decay quirk user spouting nonsense about the number one hero cheating, while Kurojiri kept quiet. At that moment, Izuku immediately realized something, as he watched their teacher and the villains. The two opposing All Might had extremely powerful quirks themselves, two quirks that could be used perfectly with one another, while All Might was still the number one hero. He was clearly not in the best state, or at least to him, he didn't look all that good. The blonde hero had a large stain on his side that was clearly blood. He stood tall, but slightly wavering, and his eyebrows were furrowed. It was clear he wasn't in the best place, and all the other heroes were nowhere to be seen. The few strongest ones that had come with his class to the USJ were noticeably exhausted, as Mirio and Nijire had overused their quirks. Tamaki was clearly terrified, and the rest of his classmates just weren't fast enough to get there and help. Izuku only wasn't as tired due to his quirk helping him keep fighting. He's not okay. He's only saying that to look strong and intimidate the villains, but it won't work, Izuku said quietly, keeping his eyes locked on the scene at the plaza before quickly turning around and locking eyes with Yaoyorozu. Momo, you need to make me a gun, and fast, and it has to be lethal. Those freakers are still going to try and kill All Might, they're just watching him, he urged the creation quirk user, quickly placing his hand out to grab the gun which the girl made, along with the magazine of bullets. Wait, Midoriya, you can't just kill the villains, that would just make you as bad as them? Kyoka quickly attempted to intercept and stop Izuku from doing something rash, stepping forward to try and block his path only to be stopped by Kaminari and Himiko, both of whom looked worried as well, but were apparently trusting the green-haired teen nonetheless. Freak, do you people really think that badly of me already? I won't kill them, I just want to stop them. Midoriya sighed, as he quickly moved further away from the group, jogging forward a few more meters towards the plaza, and aiming the gun Yaoyorozu had made, patiently waiting for one of the villains to move. And then it happened. Shigaraki dashed forward towards All Might at an incredible speed with his arm outstretched, hoping to touch the number 1 hero and decay him. But thankfully, Izuku managed to aim well. The green-haired teen fired off 4 bullets towards the moving Shigaraki, with only 2 of those shots actually hitting the villain. One hit Shigaraki in the kneecap while the other hit him in the stomach, causing the villain to crumble down to the floor in pain before suddenly disappearing into one of Kurogiri's portals. The whole class simply stood there staring at Izuku in awe, while the other heroes that had come along with All Might had just reappeared at the entrance with plenty more knocked out villains. All Might himself locked eyes with Izuku before giving him a smile and a thumbs up, which the teen reciprocated by smiling back. And that was the end of the USJ. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.